What's up guys? Welcome back to DogeBag Poker Vlogs. The vlog is finally back. I know it's been long overdue. I'm sure a lot of you have been wondering what I've been up to for the past 4-ish years that the vlog's been inactive. But I also know that most people come here for the hand histories, and I like getting into those quickly because that's what I myself enjoyed about watching poker vlogs when I first started watching them. So let's get into the session first and then we can catch up. In this vlog, I play 5-5 at the Gardens Casino, which is located in Hawaiian Gardens, California. It's actually the closest casino to where I live. Contrary to what a lot of people believe, I'm not actually in LA, even though I mostly played poker in LA. I'm actually about an hour south. So the Gardens is actually the closest place that I can play poker, and that's pretty nice because the 5-5 game there is considered the best 5-5 game in the area. Shout out to everybody who commented on the poker vlog return trailer. I'm glad to see that you guys enjoyed it and that you were hyped for the vlog to come back. It's really cool to see people keeping up with the channel even after so many years. So thank you guys for the continued support. Let's get into the hands. I sit down at a 5-5 table and bind for 600, which is the max at the Gardens. Within just a few minutes, I pick up 10 8 of clubs on the button. The low jack raises to 20, and the cutoff makes the call. I'm happy to call in position with this hand, so I make the call as well, and the big blind comes along. 4 ways to a flop, which comes 10 8 king with 2 spades. So we flop bottom 2 pair. The big blind actually leads out for $55, and the initial raiser in the low jack makes the call. Once the cutoff folds, I decide it's time to raise. I made it 155 with the intention of setting up for a pot size shove if one player calls, but looking back at it, I think this sizing is much too small. I could definitely make it like 200 or something, and I would still have enough in my stack to make a decent size shove on the turn. I'm also going to be sizing bigger here when I have bluffs, so I have more fold equity, so I need to be doing the same thing with strong hands as well. Anyways, the big blind ends up folding, and the low jack ends up making the call. The turn is the 5 of clubs, it's a complete blank. Once the low jack checks to me, there's only one move. I shove for exactly 420 and he calls very quickly. The river comes to 3 of diamonds. Once I announce that I have 2 pair, my opponent turns over pocket kings. So he flopped top set, so we start the session losing an entire buy-in. Not the best way to start the first session after bringing back the vlog. I end up selling a good chunk of my Dogecoin in order to buy back in. In this next hand, I pick up king jack offsuit in the low jack, or as I like to call it, jack king off. The under the gun player limps, and I bump it up to $25. The cutoff, the big blind, and the limper call. So we're going 4 ways to a flop, which comes ace 3 jack with 2 hearts. 2 players check to me, and I decide I'm going to bet here. Even though it's 4 ways and I only have middle pair, this board heavily favors my range, and there are a lot of worse hands I can still get value from, like heart draws or other middling pairs. So I make it $65, and all the players end up folding. So we end up taking this hand down with jack king off. I go almost 2 hours without a playable hand, and then I finally pick up pocket 7s in the cutoff. The under the gun player opens it up to $20. The low jack calls, I make the call, and both of the blinds call as well. So we're going 5 ways to a flop, which comes 6-9 deuce with 2 hearts. Action checks to the pre-flop aggressor. He decides to check, and so does the low jack. So now action is on me in position, and I'm not too worried about the under the gun player and the low jack having a hand because I feel like they would have bet if they did. The only players I'm worried about are the ones in the blinds, but in the moment I felt like there was a good chance my hand was ahead, and even if I bet here and get called, I still could get value from hands like flush draws. There also aren't many turn cards I would like to see besides the 7. So I decided to put out a small bet of $35. The small blind gets out of the way, and then the big blind puts in a check raise to 125. After the other 2 players fold, I don't really have any reason to continue with this hand with just pocket 7, so I decide to make the fold as well. And in hindsight, I probably shouldn't be betting into 4 players with just a marginal hand. Pretty soon I pick up another playable hand. I have queen jack of diamonds in the small blind. There are 3 limps and I bump it up to $40. Both the big blind and the limpers call. The flop comes king 8-10 with 2 hearts, so we flop an open-ended straight draw. Normally I would be betting on this kind of flop texture as a pre-flop aggressor, but we are playing 5 ways and I'm out of position, so it's just a little bit awkward, and I decide that I'm going to check here with the intention of check raising. This probably isn't the most balanced thing in the long run because if I had a strong hand here, I'd pretty much always bet. So that's kind of the plan I had moving forward for this hand. So what happens is the action checks to the cutoff, who seemed to be a pretty solid player. He decides to bet 300 into a pot of about 200, so he overbets the pot, which gets the button to fold. Action's now on me, and this is where I make a huge mistake. I decide to go all in for just about 550. Obviously, looking back, this is such a bad shove. I don't have a big enough stack to get my opponent to fold, and on top of that, I don't even have that strong of a draw. One big problem that I have in my game is that when I decide on a certain plan for a hand, I get fixated on that and I don't consider new information. When my opponent overbets the pot here, it kind of screams that he has a strong hand, but he doesn't want to get outdrawn. And I should have just stopped to think about that and folded, but because I had the plan from the beginning to check raise, I ended up doing that. Anyways, the low jack ends up folding, and then the cutoff makes the call and says he has two pair. I tell him he's ahead, and we're looking for some help. The turn comes the 3 of spades, and the river brings the 2 of hearts. Everyone at the table seems to think that I hit a flush when the river card comes, but unfortunately, all I had was a measly open-ended straight draw, and this makes it even more painfully obvious how bad my shove was. I end up sheepishly mucking my hand, and I'm forced to sell even more of my Dogecoin in order to buy back in. We get a chance to win back some money when I pick up pocket aces on the button. I'm ready to win a huge pot. Action folds all the way to me, and I raise to $20, and we take down the blinds.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just
I get another opportunity to win a big pot when I pick up pocket kings in the small blind. There are 3 limps, and I raise it up to $35. A Vietnamese lady and under the gun makes the call. I've spent my entire life butting heads with Vietnamese women, so I'm feeling pretty prepared for this hand. We're going heads up to a flop, which comes ace, queen, 9, rainbow. I decide to put out a bet of 35 here. I had seen this player call down light in previous hands and then show that she either had a marginal hand or was chasing a draw, so I felt like I can get value from a ton of hands here. She ends up making the call. The turn brings the 10 of hearts. This is a pretty bad card for me. My opponent could definitely have 2 pair, a set, or maybe even a straight, whereas my range doesn't really benefit too much from this card. So I decide to check it over to her, see what she does, and she checks back, which is pretty good news. The river brings the jack of spades, so we actually make the nuts on the river. It's time to go for some value here. I put out a bet of $80, and my opponent pretty quickly folds, so the jack on the river might actually have been a bad card for me since it kills action. If the river came a blank, I probably would have just gone for value anyways, and maybe my opponent would have called. But with how the session's been going so far, it's nice to just win a hand. What's also nice is picking up pocket aces only a couple hands later. This time I'm in the hijack, there's 1 limp, and I raise to $20. The same player from the previous hand makes the call, this time she's on the button. The flop comes king 4-8 with 2 diamonds. I have the ace of diamonds in my hand. I make it $25, and my opponent min raises to 50. I don't really know what to make of this bet. I'm not really sure what she's doing this with, but obviously I'm not going to fold here, and I don't think raising is that great of an option, so I just make the call. The turn brings a pretty bad card. It's a king of hearts, so if she was raising with some kind of strong top pair, she now makes trips. I decide to check it over to her, and this time she actually checks back, so I start to feel a little better about my hand. The river is the jack of diamonds, completing the front door flush. I do have the ace of diamonds though, so that reduces a lot of the combos of flush draws she could have on the flop. As I mentioned before, this player would often call down pretty light, so I was pretty confident I could get some value here. I'm not really sure what kind of hands I was putting her on with how she played, but I decided to put out a small bet of $65. She pretty quickly makes the call, and once I show my aces, she shows the other 2 aces. So we end up chopping this hand, and somehow I end up making less money this time around with aces than in the previous hand when I simply took down the blinds. In the next hand, I have ace queen offsuit and under the gun. I make it $20 and get 3 callers. So we're going 4 ways to a flop, which comes 3-7 jack with 2 diamonds. The blinds check it over to me, and I make it $55. After 2 players fold, the big blind check raises to 140. This is the same player who stacked me in the very first hand when he flopped top set against my bottom 2 pair. He was a solid player who hadn't done anything too out of the ordinary. Now, I made a mistake here and thought my opponent was in early position. He was actually in the big blind and I wasn't under the gun, but we weren't actually seated next to each other since there had been people leaving and coming back throughout the session. So that made it kind of confusing where the action was at times, and I assumed that his range from early position would consist of things like 2 high cards or middling pocket pairs, and the only hand that I could see him raising for value here realistically would be like pocket 7s, maybe ace jack every now and then. I also had been c-betting pretty frequently throughout the session, even in smaller hands that weren't shown in the vlog, and I felt like this player was good enough to be raising wider to punish that. But to be honest, I was probably just looking for a reason to call because I don't want to fold here. So with all this, I decided to make a call with my 2 overs and backdoor flush draw, which was obviously very bad in hindsight. The turn comes a complete blank, and it was at this point that I realized my mistake and realized that my opponent was in the big blind, which means he could have a much wider range of hands. He ends up continuing for 225 and obviously just gonna have to fold here. I feel extra dumb at this point for having made that mistake. Either way though, I should just be folding on the flop. Calling just puts me in tough spots on later streets when I don't improve, and even if I hit an ace or a queen, it probably doesn't change the relative strength of our hands, since I'm probably ahead of his bluffs anyways, and if he was raising for value, then I'm still probably behind those hands. I often make the mistake of trying to make the correct decision in the short term, which means I try to hero call or hero fold a lot, but I should just focus on trying to make consistent, long-term good decisions, even if it means I'm going to make the wrong fold sometimes. At this point, the table ended up breaking. As I said before, people were getting up and leaving all the time, and eventually we just had too few players to continue. I ended up drawing the ace to move to a new table, and I pick up pocket tens in early position. I open it up to $20. The hijack makes the call, and the button squeezes to 85. I make the call, and the hijack folds, so we're going heads up to a flop of Jack 8-7 with 2 spades. We flop a gut shot to go along with our pair. My opponent continues with a bet of $80. He only has about 185 behind, so now I kind of feel like I'm in a weird spot. If I call here, the pot's going to be pretty big, and we're probably going to get all the money in. So I think about it for a while, and I decide that the button could be doing this with a variety of bluffs. He could have ace-king, ace-queen, king-queen, maybe 2 spades. So I eventually decide that I'm going to get the money in here. I put them all in for about 265 total, and he ends up making the call. The turn brings the 5 of clubs, and the river brings the ace of spades. Really bad card because he could have potentially improved the top pair, or he could have hit his spade draw. But my opponent didn't end up having either of those because he shows us pocket kings. So I end up losing the first hand at the new table for a pretty sizable pot. In this next hand, I pick up king-queen in the big blind. My phone battery was running out, so I was recording with my actual camera this time, and I accidentally ended up pressing the record button twice in succession. So the only clip I have from the beginning of this hand is me checking my cards. I'm just going to keep repeating this 1-second clip until we get to the part of the hand where I realized that I had stopped recording. Anyways, I'm in the big blind with king-queen. The hijack raises to $20, and he gets 3 callers including me, so we're going 4 ways to a flop. It comes down queen 3-7 rainbow. We flop top pair with a good kicker. The small blind checks, I check, and the hijack puts out a c-bet of $30. One player folds, and the small blind and I end up making the call. So 3 ways to a turn card, which is the 8 of diamonds. Still feeling pretty good about my hand, although this does bring several draws onto the board. The small blind and I check it over to the hijack once again. He continues with a bet of 125, and this time I'm the only player who calls. The river brings a deuce of clubs. This time my opponent asks for a count. I have 445 left in my stack, which is only a little bit more than a pot-sized bet. If he shoves here, I'm going to be a little bit concerned, but I don't think I can fold after calling 2 streets and with this kind of run out. He ends up betting 325. I get the feeling that I'm beat, but I end up making the call. My opponent doesn't look too happy, and he very clearly doesn't want to show his hand, so I don't feel the need to make him show, and I just turn over my top pair, and he mucks, so we end up winning a pretty big pot. It was nice to finally win a big hand after losing for pretty much the entire session. I was running pretty badly throughout the session, and also not playing my best, which isn't a good combination. Hopefully after winning this hand, I can pick up some momentum and maybe turn the session around. In the next hand, I pick up pocket 9s. There are 2 limps, and I bump it up to $25. Both the hijack and the blinds end up making the call, so we're headed 4 ways to a flop, which comes 10 ace 9 with 2 spades. We flop bottom set, the small blind checks, and the big blind actually leads out for $35. It feels really good when you raise pre, flop a strong hand, and then have a player bet into you out of position. The board is pretty wet though, and I definitely want to raise here. My opponent has about 345 left behind after betting, so I'm thinking I'm going to raise to something like 120. If he makes the call, then the effective stack size is going to be less than pot on the turn, and I can easily get it in. But I don't end up raising to 120 because the hijack actually raises to 105, leaving only about 125 behind. This is a dream situation. Action is now on me, and I'm thinking about whether to just call, which might induce the big blind to come along, or to raise and just take the more aggressive option. Ultimately, I think raising is better. I want to get the money in now rather than face a weird situation on the turn if a bad card comes. So I make it $250. It's enough to put the hijack all in, and if the big blind comes along, he's pretty much going to be committed. The big blind ends up folding. Action is now on the hijack, and he says his hand is too good and that he has to call. If he had a set of 10s or a set of aces, he wouldn't be saying that, so looks like he either has 2 pair or a really strong draw. We're hoping for a clean run out. The turn comes the queen of clubs, and the river brings the 4 of diamonds. My opponent ended up having ace 10 for a flop 2 pair, pretty much the best situation we could have asked for, and we scoop a really big pot. The session seems to be turning around a little bit, but I'm still stuck a bunch of money. Later on, I pick up jack 8 of clubs on the button. There's a straddle and the cutoff limps in. I make it $40 and both the straddler and the limper call. So we're headed to a flop which comes 3-5 ace with 2 clubs. We flop a flush draw and the board is ace high, so when both opponents check it over to me, I put out a c-bet of $55 and the cutoff makes the call. The turn brings the deuce of hearts. My opponent only has about 165 left, so I just decide to put him all in here once he checks to me, and he ends up making the call, so we're looking for some help on the river. The river card does improve my hand, but it's a jack. So I only have second pair, and once I show my hand, my opponent ends up showing ace 9 of hearts. So he had top pair, and he rivered a flush just for good measure. I know this hand wasn't terribly interesting, but I think it's good to show that even these more mundane hands still contribute a good amount to the win/loss. In this case, it increased the dent in our stack, and it also got me thinking that if I'm taking this line with jack 8 of clubs here, I'm probably going to be taking the exact same line with any hands that flop a flush draw. Another line I could have taken in this hand is maybe bet on the flop and then check turn, and then my opponent might have bet river, but he might not have gone all in, so even though I hit my jack on the river and might have called anyways, I could have lost less money in that situation. Anyways, I just think it's good to be thinking about what I'd be doing with my entire range of hands, so I can make sure I'm not bluffing at too high of a frequency, otherwise I'm going to be really unbalanced in these types of spots. I pick up pocket 10s once again in the small blind. The hijack makes it 15, I 3-bet to 50, and the hijack makes the call. So we're going to a flop heads up, which comes 10-7 king, rainbow. We flop a set once again. It's middle set this time, and the board's pretty dry. I think about checking for deception since it's a fairly dry board, and I'm not going to be scared of too many turn cards. But both of us are playing pretty deep, and I want to start building a pot as soon as possible. So I bet $45, and my opponent makes the call. The turn is the deuce of clubs. I continue with a bet of 150 into 195, so about a 3/4 pot size bet. And my opponent pretty reluctantly makes the fold. So I think I got a little bit too greedy here and sized up way too much. After the hands I had won at this new table, I had a pretty big stack, so I had about 950 behind after betting 150, and I just really wanted to get the pot as big as possible so that I can win back as much as I could. But I think I should have probably just made it like 120 or something. When I make it 150 here, I think it makes it a little bit too easy for middling king X type of hands to fold. My opponent also could realistically have something like queens or jacks, and seemed like he had something he didn't want to fold, but I did end up betting pretty big, so might have been a mistake in this spot, and even though I end up winning the hand, I might not have played it the best I could. After that hand, I decided it was time to leave. I was in for a total of $2,400 and ended up cashing out for $1,265, which makes for an $1,135 loss.
No, wait a minute, somebody leaving? He should buy us around with that much money.
I'm down about this much money.
Shut the hell up. You're bluffing, man.
No, I'm not. No, I'm down 1165 or something like that.
Right now on this table.
At this table, I'm up. At that table, no.
Overall, you're down $1,100.
About 1100.
God bless you.
Next time.
Go to JYP K-pop training.
Where at?
Funny?
K-pop training.
Yeah,
Got that little
funny.
cute baby face.
J-pop training?
Yeah.
What ethnicity do you think I am?
It doesn't matter. Thai.
People think I'm different
A
things.
little bit of Thai, man. Don't worry about it. But you got a little cute little face. You got a little cute baby face.
What about you? Why don't you do J-pop training?
Got camera.
All right, good luck, everyone.
Thanks.
Hurry up, man. Don't be scared.
Thank you. that's it for this session. Hope you guys enjoyed the first vlog of season 2. When I ended the vlog in 2018, I continued to play poker the following year for a bit, and I was documenting some of that on my Instagram, which some of you saw. It was kind of hard to vlog and play poker at the same time though, which is why I ended the vlog. It was already hard enough to balance poker and other life stuff, and I had things going on that were making it kind of hard to continue vlogging, but those things weren't a factor after a while, and I actually planned to bring back the poker vlog in March of 2020, and then we all know what happened to the world in March of 2020. So since then I've been on a really long break from poker, and I wasn't really interested in playing for a while. And then as of recent, I started playing more frequently, and I just kept thinking to myself that I was gonna bring back the poker vlog. I wanted to make content again, and it just never happened for a long time. I finally just decided I need to just film a session and post a vlog. So here we are. Big shout outs to those of you who continued commenting, even during the years that the channel was inactive. It's so crazy to me how people who I don't even know can be so invested in the channel and my poker journey and continue commenting, hoping for the vlog to come back. I'm super grateful for all of you, and to have a platform like YouTube. If there's one thing in my life that stayed consistent, it's that I like making videos and I love making content. So this poker vlog by far is the best and most rewarding thing I ever had in terms of like content creation. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications if you haven't already, because I am going to be posting more often. Anyways, I don't want to make the video too long, so if you have any questions or anything, then just let me know in the comments and I will probably address them in the next vlog. Until then, I will see you guys later. Peace.